Hello, scholars. This is the professor speaking, and I welcome you to Hi, That's Scary, a podcast that utilizes cannabis to analyze horror cinema. The title of today's lecture is Musicals, the Unsung Heroes of Horror, Part 1. Today we will be discussing Little Shop of Horrors, a 1986 adaptation of the off-Broadway musical. The film stars Rick Moranis as Seymour Krelborn, Ellen Greene as Audrey, Levi Stubbs as Audrey II, Vincent Gardenia as Mushnik, and Steve Martin as Orrin Scrivello DDS. There are several writing credits, which includes Charles Griffin, Roger Corman, and Howard Ashman. It was directed by Frank Oz. The strain used for this analysis was white knuckles in a cartridge. This was an indica strain that aids in the treatment of anxiety, insomnia, and muscle pain. Let's get to some background about this film. Little Shop of Horrors was originally a black and white horror film made in 1960. This movie ended up gaining a bit of a cult following, which is how the off-Broadway musical came to be in 1982. That musical upgraded to off-Broadway, and then in 1986, the world was blessed with the film adaptation, which makes this movie a remake, a retelling, and an adaptation all in one, a glorious triple threat. This film is near and dear to my heart, scholars. I have to say it is hands down my favorite. I know every single song, and if anyone thinks I was not performing while taking my notes, that's funny. I want to mention that this film has two endings. I will be talking about both. But I just want it to be known that the version I watched while high as a bird was the original release. Without further ado, let's get scary. We open with a galaxy upon the screen. There's then a gravelly voiceover reading out a text scroll, giving some context to what the viewer is walking into. It gives an ambiguous time period, but everything is very 50s/early 60s, and tells how the human race, quote, encountered a deadly threat to its very existence. There's a transition with a bottle dropping into a puddle that brings the song Little Shop of Horrors. Crystal, Ronette, and Chiffon, two of which were portrayed by Black TV mom legends Tashina Arnold and Tisha Campbell, come out. The three are wearing blue peplum polka dot dresses. I'm going to mention their outfits whenever they're on screen. This is because in musicals, the choices for costumes are vary for a reason. They allow the viewer an insight into the energy going on to the scene. The three sing and dance in the rain, untouched by it. They can enter anywhere, seemingly out of nowhere, unseen. They are our Greek chorus. They go to a shop and walk downstairs to the basement where we get to meet Seymour Krelborn, who promptly drops a shelf full of plants and pots for said plants. From upstairs, Mr. Mushnik yells, asking what Seymour is doing, having heard the crash. The first line from Seymour is one of my favorites. Very little Mr. Mushnik. Seymour goes upstairs to Mushnik's flower shop as he's gathering pots to bring upstairs. It can be heard on the radio that there was an eclipse last week. We switch to the storefront to meet Mushnik, the owner of the establishment. Most of the words out of his mouth are picking at Seymour for every little thing or lamenting that people aren't buying flowers. At this time, Audrey arrives at work. She's very late and trying to hide her face from her coworkers. Mushnik has eyes though, and sees that she has a big old black eye. He immediately asks about it, and she tries to dodge the question. Mushnik knows her boyfriend is the one that hit her, and he says to her that he's, quote, beginning to think he's not such a nice boy. He's really trying to voice his opinion about her well-being without being too aggressive about it. At the same time, this is obviously a repeated behavior, so this line should have been said well before she had a black eye. Seymour comes up the stairs and trips, dropping the flower pots and breaking a lot of them. Mushnik yells at him, and Audrey very quickly goes to defend him while helping him pick up the broken pots. They exchange this little look, and it's just so blatantly obvious that they were in love here. Out in front of the store are Crystal, Ronette, and Chiffon, but now they are in street clothes and interact with the other characters. They have the ability to switch between veils, narrating through song at one moment and then helping the story along in the next. It's such an interesting visual to have them go from these 60s-esque girl group to they're literally called street urchins. Mushnik sees them loitering, insert eye roll here, and makes them leave. He asks why they aren't in school if they want to better themselves. Crystal turns to him and says that when you're from Skid Row, ain't no such thing. This is the transitional line to the song Downtown. It never ceases to amaze me when the opening notes of this start because it's just so powerful. The song Downtown is all about the struggles of living in poverty. It talks about the issues of the neighborhood they live in. The chorus are in these pinky purple dresses that are very Jackie O, creating a visual parallel between the ensemble, the people of Skid Row, and the upper class people that they work for. Audrey comes in and tells of the issues she's had with men that live there. This leads into Seymour's backstory, him being an orphan taken in by Mushnik, who belittles him to the point that he just accepts it as fact. He goes on to say that people only live on Skid Row when their, quote, life's a mess, mentioning the mental health issues that come with living in poverty. He turns down an alley and sings about how he wants to leave. At the end, there's a chain link fence, and the people of Skid Row start climbing it, looking like zombies, dead inside from their living conditions. Seymour runs, and he and Audrey end up at the same street corner to end the song, but they don't know the others there. Back in the shop, time passes with no customers. Mushnik is over not making money, so he says he's going to close down. Audrey gets Seymour to bring up a strange and unusual plant he got recently, hyping it up to Mushnik while he's gone. He brings up the plant, which is like if a Venus flytrap crossbred with a clam. Seymour says he named it Audrey 2, which causes Audrey to squeak, and they were in love here. The plant is placed in the window, and despite Mushnik's skepticism, a man comes in to ask about it. Seymour then tells the story of how he got Audrey 2 in the song Dadu. The chorus has on these green Asian-inspired dresses as Seymour was in Chinatown when he got the plant. While there, the eclipse that was mentioned over the radio happened, and suddenly Audrey 2 appeared out of nowhere. Seymour paid $1.95, which is $17 in today money, to the man who ran the plant stand he went to. The man in the flower shop finds the story interesting and decides that since he's there, he'd like to buy $50 in roses. He only has a $100 bill, which Mushnik doesn't have change for, so the man buys $100 in roses. I want to note that Mushnik's was filled with dead flowers. Where do these $100 worth of flowers, alive roses, hiding? Because they weren't out front. For the rest of the day, people flood in buying flowers to see Audrey 2. At the end of the day, Mushnik offers to take Audrey and Seymour to dinner to celebrate the successful day. Audrey says that she can't make it because she has a date. Mushnik tries again to tell her to leave her boyfriend. Audrey cites the money he makes being a doctor, dentist, and the fact that she has no one else. After she leaves, Seymour is still willing to go to dinner, but Mushnik makes him stay when Audrey 2 wilts in front of them. Seymour brings the plant back downstairs to his room and sings Grow For Me. In this song, he's listing all of the things he's tried to take care of the plant, such as different levels of moisture and mineral supplements. He grows more and more frustrated as the song goes on, picking up the mess he'd made earlier in a bit of an angry cleaning thing. He picks up some roses, and a thorn pricks him right as he says the line, "What do you want from me, blood?" The plant perks up and starts making this suckling noise. Seymour looks surprised, curious, and happy, and I was just sitting there wondering why he didn't throw it into a fire already. Scholars, I am letting you know now, if I have a plant that starts making suckling noises and wanting my blood, it's getting thrown in a fire. When Seymour put his hand near it, it tries to bite him. Testing to see if blood is actually what the thing wants, he puts his uninjured hand near it. The plant turns away from it. Yet and still, it has not been burned. Seymour is squeamish, but still squeezes his finger to give the plant food. His human blood. The plant has now tasted human blood. I wonder if that's going to bite Seymour in the ass later. Seymour leaves the plant alone and it grows, stretching out the can it's currently placed in. Seymour takes the plant to a local radio broadcast. He waits in the lobby and there's a bunch of different types of people that the film classifies as weird. As they're waiting, a woman goes near them and bends forward for something, putting her butt in proximity of Audrey too. Seymour isn't paying attention and narrowly keeps the plant from biting this woman's ass. He struggles to do it, too, showing how the plant is already pretty strong on its own. Seymour gets called in to do an interview with Wink Wilkerson, who does the introduction while he's walking in. Wilk was played by the late, great John Candy, by the way. He asks Seymour how he got the plant, so Seymour tells his story. We cut back to the flower shop where Mushnick is listening to the radio broadcast and yelling for Seymour to say the address of the shop. Audrey comes in right as the show is ending, her arm in a sling. When Mushnick asks if she got tied up, she responds with, "No, just handcuffed a little." Mushnick closes up the shop after they have a short chat, and Audrey heads back across the street to her apartment. Crystal, Ronette, and Chiffon are on her stoop, in street clothes again. They see her and urge her to dump her boyfriend and tell her to date Seymour instead. She laughs because she doesn't think she deserves him and says as much. She goes inside and the girls walk down the street saying that Audrey is suffering from low self-image. Audrey then sings her beautiful solo, Somewhere That's Green, that has her fantasy play out on screen. The song is the perfect encapsulation of the quote-unquote American dream that was sold to the public starting around that time. She wants the white picket fence, the home out of a magazine, 2 children that look like small versions of her and Seymour. It very much shows the consumerist ideals of the concept of the American dream. The whole goal is to amass a bunch of stuff, just stuff, to prove how successful you are. But to the people living in poverty on Skid Row, like Audrey, it's a thing to hold on to and hope for. Sometimes hope is all they have. She finishes her song saying how she'd be Seymour's bride and pulling him into a bedroom with 2 beds in it. For the youngsters that don't know this, for a very long time on TV, shows depicted married couples with 2 separate beds because it was believed that by having 1 bed, it would give the rightful and obvious indication that the couple has sex. So Audrey's fantasy is very heavily grounded in what has been shown to her by American advertising, especially when this was a time where TV characters would advertise a product during the show. It's all superficial symbols of having escaped the crushing hell that is being poor in America. After Audrey's song, the camera goes to the chorus, who are dancing on a rooftop. They have these flashy red flapper-style dresses for the song Some Fun. Flapper dresses were very popular in the 1920s. Now, in the 1920s, there was a boom of people partying and a lot of money was thrown around. Unfortunately, that practice wasn't stable and eventually the US fell into the Great Depression. So these dresses, like the extravagance of the 20s, are a mask of the seedy underbelly of their lyrics. They sing over a montage of Seymour feeding Audrey to his own blood, as well as the store being very busy. It ends with Seymour in the flower shop, leaning against the wall, looking out of it, which makes sense considering the blood loss combined with the very sudden changes in his life. Mushnick starts yelling at him, asking about the order for the Shivas, their biggest funeral client. Seymour runs to the back when Mushnick yells at him some more for forgetting the order. He asks for Audrey's help, and she quickly puts something together. They chat, which ends up with Seymour being self-deprecating. Audrey points out his self-esteem issues, which are true, but she's also projecting a bit here, and eventually offers to take Seymour shopping. He's surprised. Once she confirms her offer, he asks if they could go after work. Audrey declines. She has a date. Mushnick comes by and starts criticizing Audrey's boyfriend, who is legitimately terrible, but mostly mentions his motorcycle and leather jacket. It ends up muddying his argument for the modern audience because those aren't things that are considered bad. They shouldn't have been in the first place, but that's classism for you. This is how we meet Oren Scribello, DDS. He's riding his motorcycle. There's a green screen that was probably great for the 80s, but in high def looks funny now. His opening and only number is "You'll Be a Dentist." He sings about his being utterly deranged, committing animal cruelty, and what his mother told him due to that. The chorus are wearing these 40s blazer dress type things. It's cute. And they're his backup. He gets to his practice, rocking his nurse's shit by hitting her in the face. He likes inflicting pain. When the chorus arrives, having changed into nurses' uniforms, Oren doesn't really interact with them. The viewer gets treated to him going in people's mouths and abusing them. It's a very uncomfortably intimate form of assault. The song ends with Oren ordering a patient to spit. This leads to a transition where Seymour is throwing out mop water. I really love the transitions in this movie. Oren comes flying in on his motorcycle. He takes a hit of nitrous oxide, the fun drug dentists use on their patients. He tries to go past Seymour into the store. Seymour, not knowing who he is and it being past closing, tries to stop him. Audrey comes out in time to intervene before Oren got angry. Oren tries guessing Seymour's name as he remembered hearing his segment on the radio. When he makes a few wrong guesses, Audrey supplies the answer and is promptly scolded by Oren. He sees Audrey too and gets excited. It's fucking massive now. Audrey tries to get him to leave so they could go on their date. This sets Oren off and he intimidates her, towering over her as she leans on his bike. He makes her call him doctor when she apologizes. He turns to Seymour with a smirk and says how they, quote-unquote, gotta train him. Offers him free dental work and double checks that Audrey has the handcuffs with her before driving off. Seymour heads inside and starts venting to the plant about Oren and how Audrey deserves better. Audrey, too, collapses. Seymour runs up to it, concerned. And then, the plant talks. It tells Seymour to feed him. Seymour is in shock and rambles about the plant talking instead of lighting it on fire. Like, this is a musical, so the actual horrifying things tend to fly over people's heads. But think about it. There's this huge plant that can talk and is thus sentient, and is also able to move. And all it's been eating is human blood! Seymour could have gotten animal blood before offering himself as lunch, but he didn't, so now there's this hangry, bloodthirsty plant. Not only can it talk, it can sing. Feed Me is very straightforward. Audrey, too, tries to convince Seymour to give it food. Seymour asks two very important questions. Does it have to be human? Does it have to be mine? He asks if he can get some meat from the butcher, and the plant tells him that it has to be fresh blood. You done fucked up, Seymour, you stupid ass. Audrey too starts crooning and telling Seymour about all the things it would do and get for him if he fed it. It offers riches, fame, women. Seymour has a serious debate with himself. I'm shouting out, Rick Moranis is singing here because that belted "I don't know." Yes, love it. Audrey 2 finally offers up Audrey. And this is when Seymour starts fantasizing about all the things he could have, how those things could elevate his status. There's this underlying tone of seduction as well, like if Audrey 2's voice was higher and more stereotypically femme, it would be more obviously sexual to a straight audience. It rubs its vines all up on Seymour while singing about giving him stuff, including sex. Remember that this musical was primarily written by Howard Ashman, one of the gayest gays to gay, an icon. The musical was then adapted for the screen, but the lyrics and the tone are all the same. What I'm getting at here is that Howard knew exactly what he was doing. This is meant to be a seduction, coaxing Seymour to murder, with also a side of monster fucking. Seymour really starts considering it until he's upset by Audrey 2's line of, "Take a breath and look around. A lot of folks deserve to die." When Seymour objects, saying that he doesn't know who would deserve getting fed to a plant, Audrey 2 points out that he does. Orrin rides up to Audrey's apartment, yelling at her that she's stupid. Audrey isn't with him. She's running up the street, saying over and over that she's sorry, doctor. Her crimes? Touching his hair and, quote-unquote, falling off the motorcycle. I don't think she fell, but okay. When she catches up, he yells at her some more to get the door open faster. Once inside, he requests Vitalis, a hair tonic used for styling. She tells him she's out, and he hits her. The camera cuts back to Seymour, his face bathed in red lighting, and he's utterly infuriated. It's a beautiful shot. He starts with this angry rock-type duet with Audrey 2, both saying, "The guy sure looks like plant food to me." They go on to talk about his abuse of Audrey before finishing with the line, "You/I need blood and he's got more than enough." With Seymour huffing with rage, Audrey 2 tells him to go get it. That's where we're going to end it today, scholars. Before we finish up, I just wanted to give a quick announcement. We at Hi That's Scary are going to start including sponsorships, so be prepared for your professor to be as obnoxious and annoying as I am every lecture. Tune in next week for Musicals, The Unsung Heroes of Horror, Part 2. Until then, stay scary.